read a quote from Wendell Berry. Anybody read Wendell Berry? Love Wendell Berry. I'm so thankful for the years that I homeschooled my girls because I read so many books that give me joy to this day. Like, there's nothing quite like the wisdom of people that lived in a saner time and, have the ability to articulate themselves so well. But okay, all the ancient wisdom tells us that work is necessary to us, as much a part of our condition as mortality. That good work is our salvation and our joy. That shoddy or dishonest or self-serving work is our curse and our doom. We have tried to escape the sweat and sorrow promised in Genesis, only to find that in order to do so, we must forswear love and excellence and health and joy. Wow. Nothing like good hard work. So this section is about receiving the call on your life, the call to adventure, the hero's journey. This is probably... Was that me? Oh, sorry. Okay. It's like, wait, do I have my phone on me? This is one of my favorite topics in the whole entire world, to talk about calling, vocation, the work that we're called to do. I touched on a lot of it actually when we were talking to Kim about how do you know what your calling is. There's a few things that I think of when I think about the clues to your calling. So if you think about your life, the clues to what you are meant to do, or it's like the quote that Shelley mentioned about, I can't remember the exact quote, but God made me fast, and when I run, I feel his pleasure. So what you're doing when you feel God's pleasure, what you're doing that you would do whether or not you got paid for it, what you're doing that people often ask you, hey, can you help me with my, oh, hey, I noticed that you're really good at this, and people often ask you to do it. So it's often something that people ask you to do. They recognize that it's a gift of yours. Hey, could you come help me organize my kitchen? Or could you help me decorate this? Or could you help me pick out a paint color? Or could you help me whatever? So a lot of times there are clues to your calling all around you. There are very many times clues to it in your childhood. For a lot of us, it springs from our wounds. So if you think about times in your past where it was a significant childhood event or a significant event in your life where you felt rejected or felt a wound, sometimes something springs out of that becomes a clue to your calling. And I'll give you an example. I had a lot of pain in childhood that I didn't know what to do with. And I was keeping journals from the time I can remember. I had notebooks everywhere. I wrote really super bad poetry in middle school. Can you imagine the badness of a middle school doing poetry? One of my teachers one time said, I have this poem that you wrote for me when you were 14. I would love to post it on Facebook. I'm like, no, please don't. But that is how I processed pain. Now, did I ever imagine that I would become a writer, or that writing would be a way that I process life? I really never imagined that when I was younger. I just thought I'm one of those people who likes to doodle. Like my journals often just looked like I would write random things. I would just doodle. I would whatever, but I had journals all the time. And the clue to that showed up so often, like the clue that someday maybe writing would be something that had something to do with, what I was going to do with my life. The other thing that when I look for clues in my past is that I was completely obsessed with teachers and coaches because they were my lifeline. Like everything to me. Teachers and coaches. I was probably way more than most people, certainly way more than most other kids in my class. Sit in the front, pay attention, make relationship. I looked to them for some kind of hope, for some kind of wisdom or hope and whereas like, if you think about how most teenagers or most, middle schoolers look at teachers, it's definitely not that. So I think that's interesting too, because I ended up being a person who loves to teach and loves the role of a cheerleader or a coach, to somebody else. It's because that was such a critical part of my own story and my own upbringing. And there's the same clues in your life. If you think about like what your giftings are, how God made you. I was just talking to Laura about this because I cannot even tell you for how long I kind of hated how I was made, because I felt like I didn't have a proper attention span for things. Like I would get all in a flurry and get really into something and do it and obsess about it, and then drop it like a hot potato and not do it. And then, pick up something else and be like, I'm all about scrapbooking now. Like I'm a scrapbooker, and I would stay up like for 17 nights in a row and create a gorgeous scrapbook. And then I don't scrapbook for 5 years. Like that kind of thing. It used to so bother me about myself. Like I wish I was a proper adult who could just daily do normal things at a normal pace. Like instead of like, all into whatever Steve called me, unipolar hypomaniac. Like go crazy, crazy, crazy about something and then, But in those flurries of my life, I've created some amazing things. And I can hate the way I'm made, or I can realize that that's how I'm made. And there have been clues to me being like that since I was younger. And I've only in my adulthood, and really only in the past 10 years, learned to stop beating myself up for not having the right kind of brain or the right kind of way of being in the world, or the right kind, I'm not doing it right, whatever that is supposed to mean. And I think if you think about your life, there are clues everywhere. Jamie Nato, if you haven't watched her video you haven't watched it yet, we'll get you access to the live event from January. But she talks about breadcrumbs, that all throughout your life there have been little breadcrumbs to, oh, there you go, to kind of what you were supposed to do. And she was talking about being an entrepreneur, and she was talking about, she's been selling stuff since she was a little kid, like setting up a stand and creating things, and selling things. And I feel the same way about a lot of things in my life, that I can see the breadcrumbs. I can see it's there. And a lot of times we abandon that because now we have to do grown-up things. And, we have to have a grown-up job, and we have to, or whatever. So I feel like part of trying to figure out, because I hear this from several of you where you don't really know what you want to do. You could do a lot of different things. And you're not sure, what the best use of your skills or your time or your resources are. And I think sometimes we've grown up too much. We were like afraid to dream and afraid to remember the things that gave us joy or that we just love to do. Or, somebody asked me today, like, I love this thing, but is that really from God? It's kind of like, is that God's will? Well, He created you and gave you the desires that you have. And so I think we turn that off at some point when we become proper adults, and we are like, okay, we're done with that. And now we need to get on to being a proper adult. And I did the same thing, and I'm like, oh, well, I should practice medicine. which is fine. It's a great field. But can you see how that doesn't exactly fit like how I'm made? It just doesn't honor the way that I'm made. It forces me into a mode of being that I can do it, and I did it for a while, but it never quite felt like when I do this, I feel God's pleasure. It felt like when I do this, I can pay the bills. And that's okay. I'm thankful for that because it was part of my story and I wouldn't change a thing. And I'm so thankful I have that. So many people, when I quit practicing medicine, were like, this is such a travesty. You went to all that school. You're just wasting your life and you're wasting, all your education. Do you ever waste education? No. Do you ever, you're not wasting anything. You're learning things that don't work for you. You're learning a way that maybe you don't want to spend the next 45 years. So I have learned a lot from making a lot of mistakes. Now, contrast that to my husband, who is a podiatrist and thrives on, he's like such a proper adult. He just thrives on the daily, like he's always steady. Everything's always the same. Comes home at the same time, puts his stuff in the same place. Like my stuff's always somewhere else. He's like, if you just put it always in the same place, it'll always be in the same place. Yeah, that's zero fun. Zero fun. Whatsoever. But he would hate doing what I do. Because what am I going to do tomorrow? It's different than today. I don't know. Let somebody erase my list. So I have no idea what I'm doing tomorrow. Yep. But do you see what I mean? Like kind of honoring how we were made. And I look back on why I was driven to do that. And I was driven to do that out of striving. Because I thought that if I did that, then it makes me a proper adult, and then I'll get the certification. Like now go and be. Now go and do your thing. We crown you, you have this degree, and you have this thing, and go do your thing. And that gets me, what does that get me? That gets me a good paying job. That gets me respect. That means that I'm okay now, despite my background. I can see why I did it. I can see that it was probably even a necessary part of my journey. And I've always been interested in healing, what it means to really holistically, truly be healed. I love studying healing in the scriptures. My favorite passage is Isaiah 61. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. I've always had a passion for that. What I found out when I was practicing medicine is that almost none of it has anything to do with healing. At least not the way I understand healing. So I can see all these breadcrumbs like throughout my life. And I want you to think about your breadcrumbs. What are the things that made you come alive? What are the passions that keep coming up? What are the things that keep you up at night? Like, oh, this would be so cool if. Like, I love those people who are always like, they have some kind of like world passion for digging wells somewhere or water somewhere. Like, I am very much a like right in front of me person. I'll send money to places like that, but it doesn't energize me and keep me up at night. I'm very much a local, right in front of me person. And you can hate yourself for being that way and wish you were more like the people who want to build wells in Africa. Or you can appreciate the way God made you and your particular passion and your particular, in a room of this many women, there's going to be so many different passions. And it's a beautiful thing to honor what yours are and not do what I have done for a long time, which is wish that I had a different set. And wish mine looked like hers, or, I wish mine were more legitimate than, I kind of like to make dinner, so that can be my passion. Like wishing that it were bigger or more legitimate. And so as you're thinking through this and as you're thinking about your own calling, here's what I know to be the case. When you step into your purpose and you begin to live your life from your whole heart and you begin to really use your gifts to serve other people, all the other stuff kind of takes care of itself. You don't buffer. You don't have the need to live through ego, be a false version of who you are, numb, distract yourself. So many things in your life it just fixes itself when you really begin to step into your purpose and walk in your calling and use your gifts to serve other people. Now, like I said earlier, that doesn't mean that we all should quit our day jobs and, go find ourselves. Because here's where you're going to find your true self, right where you are, right? So you start where you are and you start seeing that exactly where you are is exactly where you're called to be right now. How do we know? Because it's where you are, right? So right here in this place. And until you can live fully with these 2 feet planted in this life, in this place, it won't open up. The other things you want to do and things that you feel like you're capable of, it won't open up if you don't begin to really live right here, right now, with the awareness and the touch of eternity that we talked about earlier. So getting to there looks like just honoring here and being thankful for here and grateful for here, the lessons that we're learning here, the curriculum that your life is giving you right here, right now where you are, and not wishing that you could be How many of you have done this? I've done this my whole life. If it could just be next year, and then I'll, if I could just speed, can we just fast forward through this hard thing? Or 5 years from now, we almost never just really live now. And really living now and seeing how that now is all we have. This is it. This moment with these people. This is all we have. And learning how to do that and training yourself to constantly see. Deidre, I gotta play this Jordan Peterson thing. Learning to see. Am I connected?
You will be.
Okay.
You
Okay. Learning to see that the way what you choose to see is what you see. So you can look at your life and wish it away and say, I wish this were different, and I wish I had a different job, and I wish I was, this much. It's working. It's trying. You can wish it away and wish you were all different. Or you can choose to see the beauty of here and now. And that is a skill that not very many people have. Not very many, because we want to obsess and worry and stress about all the things in the future. And we want to obsess and stress and worry about all the things in the past. I paid attention to this today. You guys don't know this, but while you were talking, I paid attention. When you pay attention to what people actually say, I can tell who is still living in the past. Do you see what I mean? And you have a lot of issues from the past, or you have a lot of regrets in the past, or if I had done this, or, this happened at this, I can hear it, that you're still living there. Or, I heard this today too, you're anxious about the future. I just don't know what I should do. What you should do is you should live with your whole heart now, right here, with the people that you have right in front of you, and honor the touch of eternity that you have right here and now. And then the rest of it, it's not connecting, Adria. Do you need to turn that off and on again, maybe? Oh, you did. And the rest of it will take care of itself. So, really learning to approach really learning to approach your calling as a few things. First of all, it's sacred. Second of all, it's God-given. So when you think about what are you called to do in your life? Well, if you're a mama, you're called to be a mama. If you're a wife, you're called to be a wife. If you work at Starbucks, you're called to be a Starbucks worker. If you're a Christian, you're called to be a child of God. Think of all the things, all the callings that you have. And ask yourself, am I honoring what I already have? Because remember in the scriptures, when God was training David to be a man after God's own heart, he gave him lots of little things along the way. Just lots of little tasks. And we want to jump ahead and just reveal to me the big, amazing thing that I'm supposed to do in the world. No, just walk today in your calling with all your heart, serving the people that God has given you to serve, loving them unconditionally. Just those two things. Do you know that if you could just perfect those two things, it would take your whole life? Do you know how hard people are to love? Really hard. Really hard. You have to practice a lot to really, truly love people unconditionally. That could just be your life's work right there. And how much better your life would be if we learned how to do that to the people in our lives without expectation. So think about all the different callings that you already have, and are you living and honoring them in a way that would signify to God that you're ready for the next thing? So are you living and walking and honoring where you are enough? Basically, it just means paying attention. Are you awake enough to all the bounty right in front of you for him to go, okay, I think David's ready to fight the giant. I think David's ready to fight the bear. Okay, I think David's ready for, to be the king. It was little bitty increments, and it took a long time for him to get ready to do the ultimate thing that God called him to do. Okay, I'm going to play this little bit that talks about how we see things.
Have a bit of chaotic potential right in front of you. It's in some sense infinite in its potential, and the domain in which you can manipulate that might be rather restricted because of the restrictions that are part and parcel of your existence. But maybe you have your room, and you might have contempt for that, and so it's a complete bloody catastrophe. But you don't have to. You could think, well, I've got a little... It isn't a room, it's a place of potential. And as soon as you know that, then it's not your room anymore. It isn't a room. The room that you see is your preconception of the space that you inhabit. What's there is a fragment of infinity. That's what's there. And what you see is the low resolution consequence of your assumption and lazy habit and blindness. That's your initial room. And you think, well, no, that's not the room. See, part of what artists do, for example, when Van Gogh paints a room and you look at it glowing, he's trying to show you what's beyond your perception of the room. And I mean this technically, like the way that your visual system is set up is that whenever memory and presumption can replace direct perception, it will, because it's simpler. So you literally see what you expect to see. And if what you see is dull and drab and boring and pointless and uninspiring, then that's you.
Okay, hold on. So if what you see is dull and drab and uninspiring and boring, that's you. That's not what's in front of you. What is in front of you is beautiful and eternal and sacred. But how often do we see what is right in front of us? Well, I just want something else. I just want 5 years from now. I just want a different something right in front of me. It will never be different until you acknowledge that you need to be different. You need new eyes. Do you see the difference? So the reason some people can go through life with curiosity and awe is because that's the way they choose to see it. And you have to train yourself to see what is in front of you like that, with the same curiosity and awe and inspiration and love. It's you. So if it's drab and uninspiring, that's not the thing that's in front of you. That's the state of you that's drab and uninspired.
It's not what's there. And what the artist does when he or she re-represents that mundane reality is to remind you of what's behind it, the potential that's there. And so what I'm suggesting to people is that they take the potential that's right in front of them. It's like, okay, and here's the rule. You're aiming up. There's something that you could change, that you would change. That might be a very small thing. Could, well, that's within the grasp of your power. Would is within the grasp of your will. To combine those two things might be a very small shift. You might only be willing to make a very tiny step forward. It's like, fine, good enough. Make a tiny step forward. And that makes you a slight bit stronger than you were before. And then the next step can be slightly larger. And it's the path of humility. It's what people act out. So there's this cathedral. It's not a cathedral. It's an oratorio in Montreal. I think it's the second largest one in the world. It's set on a hill, at the top of a hill. And there's a huge staircase leading up to it from the bottom of the hill. And people often who are crippled and who are on crutches and so forth, or in wheelchairs, go there and make their way painfully up the hill. Or maybe they do that on their knees. And the idea is that they're struggling incrementally uphill, step by step, despite their burdens, to reach the city of God on the hill. And they're acting out. That's life. It's like the proper aim is the city of God on the hill. And what is that? Well, that's that place that we talked about already, where these levels of responsibility are stacked together harmoniously, so that you're acting in your best interest, and in your family's best interest, and in the world's best interest, and I would say in the best interests of reality itself, right? Assuming that we have some integral role to play in reality, which is certainly at least true at the human level. That's the city of God on the hill that beckons to everyone. And you move up that, you move towards that humbly. So that's one step at a time. And you do it despite your burden and your suffering. All of that. And that's all dramatized in that. And it's perfect drama of that.
And would you even say...
So it's kind of why churches were always of a different architecture than other places. Now churches look like, whatever, movie theaters. But always before, churches were a different category of place, where you see things that you don't see everywhere else, and you hear words that you don't hear anywhere else, and it beckons you to the eternal. The beauty of a cathedral, the beauty of stained glass, the beauty of the Gothic architecture calls to you in a way to show you something that that's not exactly right in front of you, calls you to the eternal. And if we really grasped that what we're doing today in this minute, how we're utilizing this time, how we're utilizing the relationships and the resources we have is eternal. There's something beyond what we actually see here, and there's something way more important and way more at stake than what we see here. And churches have historically been a place that remind us of that. Like, remember that this is all actually eternal. And remember that it looks like you're just feeding your family, but you're really bringing life and hope and setting order to something that was chaotic. And it looks like you're just, writing a PDF, but you're pushing against the darkness, and you're illuminating, hope for people, and whatever it is you're doing with your life. It's so easy for us to see that what we do, it doesn't really matter, or, it's not that important. But I I have kind of submersed myself in the last few years in the literature of the hero's journey. And I just finished, I'm kind of like in the middle of reading the Odyssey. And that story is a beautiful story of our lives, that we're really on a journey home to the city of God, to the heavenly city. And along the way, we have this call on our lives. It's inward. You guys told me about it in here. I feel this nudging to do something. I feel this call to use my gifts. I feel this call to whatever it is, start a blog, write a book, build a business. I feel this, this call to help people or whatever. That is God-given. And we can choose to not answer that call, and people do it all the time, every day. But when you choose to step into the arena and answer the call and really open your eyes to how you're living out that calling and what it actually really means, not just what it looks like it means, but what it really means, it changes everything. It changes how you look at everything and how you act in every situation, and how it just changes your view of every interaction that you have. And the other thing that you get on the hero's journey is as soon as the hero decides, okay, yes, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make that change. I'm going to start that thing. I'm going to live up to my potential. I'm going to live into my call. What happens? It all goes to hell in a handbasket. The bottom falls out. The grandmother dies. Y'all told me all kinds of things have happened to you in the last 6 weeks. Your life falls apart. Somebody loses a job. So much obstacle. Should that be a surprise to us? No. That's what happens when heroes receive their call. That's what happens when you say yes to your life. You wake up to your life, and now you have a target on your back because you're in the arena now. You're ready to fight the battle. You're in the arena. So not only are you going to encounter tons of obstacles, and not only is all hell going to break loose and the bottom's going to fall out, but all the critics come out too. Trust me, all the critics come out. And so now you're carrying, you hear what Peterson said? Now you're struggling under a really heavy burden, mostly on your knees, up the steps to the city of God. And guess what? That's how you know you're there. It feels so hard. And it feels like you're bearing the burdens. It feels like you're carrying the heaviest load you can carry. So I think we're expecting it to be like unicorns and butterflies and magical. And what it feels like is heavy burden sometimes. And what it feels like is I'm struggling, and I feel like I take 3 steps forward and 2 steps back, and that's what it feels like. And maybe that's not a great way to end 8 weeks together, to say, are you ready for the journey? Because it's going to be really hard. The bottom's going to fall out of your life. God's going to burn away everything in you that doesn't serve you, which is most of you. And then he's going to resurrect this tiny part of you that can keep going forward. Amen. Isn't it true? It's so true.
And you'll be stronger for it.
And you'll be so much stronger. And the you that's left when all of the dross burns away is a beautiful, humble, free soul. Without all the ego, without all the buffering, without all the wasting time and resources, just the you that's ready to be used and ready to serve and ready to offer your gifts and ready to love. We see the end of the movie, we see the end of the hero's journey where Odysseus finally gets home to his wife that he's been gone from for 20 years. And he finally gets home to her and they're reunited and it's a beautiful story. But trust me, I'm reading the Odyssey. 99% of the book is misery, right? There's just this little sliver of, okay, there's the happy ending, you know, he comes home and he's reunited and all that. But of course now he's like 65 years old and, you know, and I think we expect it to be different. We expect it to be more comfortable and look prettier and it just doesn't. When you're walking in your calling, it looks messy and you feel raw sometimes and vulnerable. And did I put myself out there too much? You're questioning yourself and then you get all the critics and then you're really questioning yourself. We're looking for something external to fix what can only be fixed on the inside. When I was finishing the last rewrite of my memoir, I rewrote it in about a week. I spent 70 hours sitting at my desk. And I said to myself, if they don't take this last version, I'm not doing it again. I've rewritten this so many times. I've sat at this desk for so many hours. I think I have pressure sores. And I remember that week pretty well. I was so stunned by how much blood and sweat and tears went into writing a book. An honest, truthful book. Some of you asked me to sign your book today, which was such a joy. And I look at that book and it feels like, oh, how cool, you wrote a book. And I want to go, would you like to know what that was like? It was not pretty. It was not pretty and not easy, not any little bitty part of it. Now that I know what it takes to write a book, the worst book that's ever been written, I just want to bow down to the person and go, yay to you for having the courage to do that. Just so hard. And when my book came out, I got hate mail from two people in my family. Really bad hate mail. I couldn't read it, actually. I read about half of it, started sobbing, and Stevie read the rest of it, and he's like, I'm not reading it to you. It was really bad. And in trying to sort through that and deal with that, because it was already such a painful process, and then you start to get criticized for something that about killed you anyways. And I was thinking to myself, why did I do that? Like, that was crazy. I don't need this. Like, I have a good, comfortable life. Why am I doing this? And I found the Theodore Roosevelt quote, which I'm going to read, which talks about entering the arena. I wrote it because God placed a calling on my life and in my heart. And my past was the perfect training ground for what he has called me to do, which has never been easy and never looked pretty. And if that means that then I have to withstand the heavy load as we walk toward the city of God on a hill, and that as we're walking up the heavy, long path of the city on a hill and people start throwing darts at us, we go, oh, this is how it's supposed to be. So the quote from Roosevelt is, it's not the critic who counts. It's not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short time and time again, because there's no effort without error or shortcoming. But who actually does strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he did it while daring greatly. So that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who never know victory or defeat. So if you're willing to step into the arena, this is what you sign up for. And if your life, and I hate to say this because, I'm all for a life that's a balance of rest, but if your life feels too easy, you're probably not fully utilizing your gifts. You're probably not offering yourself in ways that you could. And this life is so short. And I want to just skid in there, barely breathing. Like, I want to feel like after the CrossFit workout last week, where I could barely breathe and I'm on the ground like heaving. Like, I just want to slide in and go, Lord, I gave it all I had. I served the people that I could serve with all my heart. We have to stop listening to the critics, and we need to stop being the critic. You know when I stopped being a critic? When I stepped into the arena. Because then you know how hard it is to really be living your life. No matter what you're offering, it's not easy to offer it. Being a critic doesn't require anything from us. Critics have no skin in the game. And it's easier to shrink back so that we don't have the critics heaving stuff at us. Easier to shrink back, easier to not do the thing. But when you're in the ring and you decide to be the doer and the maker, that requires that you face your own humanity, that you face your own sin, that you face your own failure, that you get yourself dirty in the vulnerable art of being a flesh and blood human who offers her work to the world. It's easy to be a critic of someone's parenting style, but it's not very easy to be a parent. It's easy to be a critic of someone's marriage, but it's not very easy to be a wife. The difference is love. Like our Father who made us, the Maker is always marked by love. The Maker loves what he makes, and he loves the people that he makes it for. He loves his work, and he loves the person for whom the work is done. It's love that keeps him in the arena when the load gets heavy and the critics come out. It's love that keeps him fighting and working so that he can spend himself in service of the people he was meant to serve. When you really embrace the calling of your life, it is work that will break you. But in the process, it will teach you so much about yourself. I have spent a lot of my life trying to find a way around my work. Anybody else? Trying to find any way to not do my work. Procrastinating my work. Distracting myself from my work. Hiding from my work. Fearful of my work. Maybe we should stop asking for things to be easier, and we should start asking for ourselves to be stronger. Instead of hoping that our kids are easier and better, maybe we could ask God to make us wiser. Maybe instead of hoping for a better boss, we ask of ourselves to be better employees. Instead of hoping for a better spouse, we ask and require of ourselves that we be a better spouse. We learn to do our work from a place of thankfulness and gratitude and from a place of love. We commit to stop buffering, to stop numbing, to stop distracting, to stop hiding, to stop pretending, to stop running, and to start embracing the work we were made to do. It's easier to not step in, for sure. But I promise you that if you commit yourself to wake up to your life, to do the work you're called to do it with all your heart, to do it with love for the work, to do it with love for the people that you're doing it for, it will change everything about your life. As women, we are created to give life. We are created to be makers and creators. So whatever the results that you want in your life, you are made in the image of God to create those results for yourself. The exact life you want can be yours today. Not when some external circumstance gets to the right place, not when you make a certain amount of money or lose a certain amount of weight or get your finances in order. When you decide, when you wake up to the life you already have, when you wake up to exactly what's in front of you and say, this is my sacred calling and I will walk in it faithfully. I will walk with my sisters up the hill despite the fact that the burden is heavy, despite the fact that the critics are after me, despite the fact that it's hard and it never looks like what I thought it would look like. When we shirk our God-given calling, when we live small, when we live from a place of comparison or judgment or negativity or pretension, we lose the privilege of seeing love and grace born in those around us. We have not yet learned how to allow the people in our lives to do what they were created to do without judging them and comparing ourselves to them. We settle so often in living from ego, from the smallest, most fragile version of ourselves. We are afraid that we are too much, or too little, or too wild, or too boring, or too strong, or too weak. But I'm telling you right now, there is something inside of you. There is a version of you inside of you that we need to come alive, that you need to come alive, that your husband needs to see come alive. Some of you have already said that. You've said, like, you know what, in the past 3 weeks or in the past 4 weeks, such and such said to me, you seem different, or you seem, you're changing, or whatever. There's magic when you begin to take responsibility for yourself and you begin to take responsibility for your own calling and your own emotions and your own mindset and your own relationships. You are in charge of you, and we need the best version of you to come alive. We need the best version of you to start embracing the call that God has placed on your life. The place where it leads most often is a cross. A place where suffering meets healing, where death meets life, where the whole of our humanity meets the depths of God's love, where the one who mocks meets the one whose face is marred with blood. A place where even critics can be transformed. So we have a choice. We have a choice that we can stay where we are, and we can stay stuck, and we can stay hidden, and we cannot go in the arena, and we can keep doing what we've been doing. Or we can enter in knowing that this is going to sting, and this is going to hurt, and this may break me. We can throw in the towel, which I want to do like every other day, and say, well, maybe I'm just not cut out for this. Or we can dig in and get to work and manage our minds and love the people God has called us to love and do the work we were created to do. The only process we can control is our own mind, our own thoughts, our own feelings, and our own actions. We can't control the outcome. We can only show up and do our work. We can write great books, but we can't make people read them. We can sow seeds in the ground, but we can't make them grow. We can enjoy the fruits of our labor when they come, but we can't demand that there be fruit. We can only show up and do our work every day. So in humility, we come to this one amazing, wild, beautiful, precious life that we have been given. And we ask for a job to do. We ask to do work that serves and benefits somebody else. We ask to do work that matters that meets someone's needs, work that is for sure hard, but work that is important and worthwhile. Work that will break us, but in the process teach us everything we need to know. As we close, I hope I don't cry, but I want you to know that we so appreciate your willingness to step into your calling, your willingness to step into the arena, your willingness to confront all of those dark issues that feel insurmountable, that feel like they've been holding you back. The person that you can become is someone that this world needs. We live in a dark place. We live in a place where people don't have hope. We live in a place where people are always fighting and tearing each other down. And we need the light that you can shed on your little corner of the world. We need the you that's wide awake. We need the you whose belly is full of fire and passion. We need the you that is playful and funny and lighthearted. We need the you that cries easily and laughs easily, that is strong and tender, the you that is living fully from a place of authenticity and vulnerability. The you who so nurtures and mothers others that she's constantly calling forth life from dry and desolate places. That's the you that we crave. That's the you that the world needs. And that is the you that God created. So, I hope you'll show her to us. I love you guys. Thank you.